Welcome to my channel. It's another weekend and another baking video. Today though, we're gonna bake a cake. Last video I baked cookies. A little backstory on today's recipe. We are gonna make a cake that my mother started making in the 1980s, and she always called it Chippy Chip Cake. I don't know if that was the original name of the recipe or not. I don't know where she got the recipe from. She doesn't remember where she got the recipe from. Again, this is like the 1980s when she started making this cake, but it was an immediate hit in our family. And this was the cake that she would bring when she went to a potluck, or if she was going to somebody's house for a barbecue, or if she was going to someone's house for a party, she would bring a Chippy Chip cake, and it became this huge hit. It's a really, really delicious cake. It's our favorite cake in our family. And I'm not just talking about my family, I'm talking about my siblings, my parents. It's not just our favorite cake. Now remember, I told you that my husband Joe doesn't like cake, so it's not his favorite cake, but my son loves it, and I love it, of course. Let me show you where I have the recipe. When I got married, my mother bought these recipe books, and these were blank recipe books that you can fill in your family recipes. My mom bought this for myself and one for my sister, and she started it. So she started it by putting in some handwritten recipes of things that were family favorites or recipes she thought that I would like. And then I started to add my favorite recipes. This is one I haven't shared with you guys yet, but one of the recipes that she did write in here was the Chippy Chip Cake recipe. This is my mom's handwriting, and she wrote me the Chippy Chip Cake recipe. She didn't write where it came from. But she has it in here. This cake recipe has some surprising ingredients. And I don't know if that makes it more delicious or what, but it does seem, there is some weird things in this cake, like marshmallows, but when you eat the cake, you don't see the marshmallows. They kind of melt into the cake. But that's the kind of weird thing that you see in this recipe. All right, so I have my trusty recipe out. We're gonna make Chippy Chip Cake, and I've already pulled some ingredients. I just have to pull the eggs and some of the cold ingredients. Okay, I pulled out the ingredients that we're gonna need to make this Chippy Chip Cake. Some of these ingredients might surprise you. We are gonna start with a basic yellow cake mix, okay? And we are gonna ice it with a can of pre-made icing. We've been making this cake for a long time, but we've never made homemade icing for it. I always just use Betty Crocker or some other brand of icing. But you're not just gonna have the standard cake mix and the standard icing. Well, the icing will be standard, but not the cake mix. Some of the things we're gonna add to this cake, the cake mix, is one package of 3.4 ounces of instant Jell-O pudding. So this is not the cook and serve one, this is the instant. We're gonna need some sour cream to add to the cake mix. We're gonna add some vegetable oil, and it will need 3 eggs. And then we're gonna layer, once the batter's mixed, and I'm gonna use my stand mixer for the batter, then we are gonna layer the cake mix with some mini marshmallows, chocolate chips, and walnuts. And we're gonna make a few layers of that, and then the cake is gonna bake in a Bundt pan. So I have already greased my Bundt pan. It's all ready to go, and those are the ingredients for Chippy Chip Cake. And the interesting thing about the marshmallows is that you don't see them in the cake. They melt completely into the cake mix, and it just adds another delicious layer. It's really a very rich cake recipe. And I hope that you try it and let me know in the comments if you enjoy it. All right, so let's start putting together Chippy Chip Cake. done. Smells like vanilla heaven. I love vanilla batter. All right, the recipe calls for a cup of mini marshmallows that are a little bit stale. I'll be honest, I didn't leave mine out, so they're not stale. That's okay. And a cup of chocolate chips and a half a cup of chopped nuts, which I'm using walnuts, so you can use any nut you like. I might need more than a half a cup of nuts because you're going to be layering. You're going to put the batter, I'm going to show you in a minute how we're going to layer this, but in a couple layers we're going to put the chocolate chips, marshmallows, and nuts on the batter. So let's start layering the cake, and I'm going to put the oven on. Okay, I have my Bundt pan ready. I have my batter. We are going to put about a third of this batter into the Bundt pan. And I'm going to eyeball it with this big spoon. But, I mean, I guess you could be fancy and divide it into 3 even layers, but I'm not going to be fancy. I'm just going to eyeball a third of this batter into the bottom of this Bundt pan. I made sure the bottom of the pan is covered, but that's about a third, maybe a little bit more than a third of the batter. Now I'm going to sprinkle a layer of marshmallows, chocolate chips, and nuts. Okay, I've added the second layer. It's okay if you can still see some of the chocolate chips and things. Now we're going to put another layer of marshmallows, nuts, and chocolate chips. It's important to make sure the marshmallows are pushed down into the batter because you don't want them to burn in the oven. For a last layer, I'm going to sprinkle more chocolate chips and nuts on the top of this cake. Beautiful. This is going to bake in an oven set at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 whole hour, and it's going to be delicious. All right, so the cake is in the oven. I'm going to clean up this kitchen, and when we come back, I'll show you the baked cake. And then we're going to have to let it cool before we can ice it. So stay tuned. Okay, my kitchen is clean. The cake is baking in the oven. The reason that I'm making a cake this weekend is because my son, Julius, is coming home from college, and his girlfriend will be joining us, Julia, and she's never had Chippy Chip Cake. So this will be the first time that my son's girlfriend will be trying it. I hope she likes it. But she does like chocolate, so she should like Chippy Chip Cake. If you love vanilla cake, chocolate chips, and chopped nuts, then this is your cake. And you really should try it. It's delicious. I'm not kidding. And it's really not that difficult to make because you use a cake mix. You don't have to cook it from, you're not baking this as a cake from scratch. So it makes it a little bit easier to make this recipe. So I highly recommend you try Chippy Chip Cake. All right, when we come back, I'm gonna show you guys the baked cake. I'm gonna try to get it out of the Bundt pan without ruining it. But if it's ruined, you know, Bundt pans are my arch nemesis. I always have such a hard time getting the cake out of the Bundt pan. And sometimes some of the cake stays in the Bundt pan. The Bundt pan is very greedy. It wants to eat my cake. Now, usually I am frosting the cake, so it doesn't really matter if the top is messed up. You can just fill it in with icing. But I would rather have a perfect looking cake. So wish me luck and see how our cake comes out of the oven. The cake is out of the oven. It looks good. It's been cooling a little bit. Let me show you it. It's cool enough that I can touch it. That's the finished product. It looks really good. Now the question is, will it pop out of the pan? That's the winning question. Let me show you how gorgeous my tree is in the backyard before we attempt to take that cake out of the pan. Our tree in the backyard is a brilliant orange. Uh-oh, Chipper's barking at nothing again. It is the end of October. We're close to Halloween, and it's 70 degrees outside in the New York Catskills. So we are having an extremely warm late fall, but that's not that unusual. I mentioned in my video on the 10 reasons why I love living in the Catskills is that we often have a late winter, meaning that our fall weather lingers for quite a while. And sometimes the temperature jumps up to the 60s or 70s in late October, and that happens. So it looks very autumny outside, but the weather feels like April or May, which is quite nice. It's a last gasp of summer. It's like one little flash of summer before winter barrels in. I'm gonna try to take the cake out of the Bundt pan and we'll see how it goes. I think the cake is cool enough to take it out. I hope it comes out good. We'll see. Excited. I flipped the Bundt cake and I heard the pop of the cake leaving the pan and landing on the dish that I set up. And I'm so excited because it's perfect, literally perfect. This has to cool completely. I'm gonna leave it out on the counter for probably an hour. Then it will be cool enough to frost with the chocolate icing, but you really need it to be cool totally before you can frost it. And then we are gonna dig into it later on tonight. So I will show you what it looks like when I dig into it. I will put the recipe for this delicious cake in the description of the video. Time to frost the cake. It's nice and cool. I'm ready to frost. really pretty. And I'm gonna show you what it looks like when we cut into it later tonight. But for the meantime, I have a cover. This is a cake dish, a plastic cake dish that I've had for probably 25 years. And I'm just gonna cover it with this plastic cover to keep it nice and cool. And we're gonna dig into it later tonight. I highly recommend getting one of these cake covers. All right, I'm gonna dig into this cake tonight. I'm gonna get some pieces out, and I want you to see the inside of the cake. And then we're gonna try some. And I hope you guys try this cake also. What's the verdict?
10 out of 10.
It's what?
10 out of 10.
Wow, can't get a plate?
No, I don't want to.
We're gonna eat it like that?
Wow. Yeah. You want the Chippy Chip Cake? That's how you have to do it.
That's craziness. I'm gonna get a proper video of both of you eating it later on a plate. Okay, I need an honest Chippy Chip Cake review from Julius and Julia.
I hated it so much, I wanted it gone off my plate, so.
There's his plate. Okay, Julia?
Honestly, it's like the best of a chocolate chip cookie and the best of cake put together.
Ooh, that's a good way to
It's delicious.
describe it.
10 out of 10. Highly recommend.
All right, let's look at her plate.
Yeah, scraped clean.
Okay, I think they both liked it.
Yeah.
I think I should make it again.
Very
Yeah.
good.
All right, thank you guys.